springtime in Georgia, and that means it's onion season, and specifically Vidalia onion season. Everywhere you go in this part of the state, there's an aroma in the air. You might say it smells like onions. Around here, they say that's the smell of success. Amazingly, this onion has been around less than 100 years. For the first 50 years of its existence, it was just a local favorite. About 40 years ago, the rest of the world started catching on. But if it wasn't for maybe the happiest accident in the history of agriculture, sometime back in the 1930s, we'd have never had it at all. Come on, let me take you where the food comes from. This is a Vidalia onion. If you have somehow never had one, you'd be surprised to find out it's savory like its cousins, but it's so sweet you can eat it like an apple, and people do. The history of this onion is amazing. It happened almost by accident back in the 1930s. People grew onions around here, but they were regular white, yellow, red onions, just the kind you ordinarily buy. They were a little bit milder than they were other places. This one farmer got a late start. He had to freeze, take out his onion transplants. He couldn't find any more. He had a trainload shipped in from Texas, an onion called the 1015. When he planted it in Vidalia, Georgia, it came out sweet. He was devastated. He didn't know where to go with this sweet onion. He thought he was ruined. Turns out, he had started an industry. This onion can only be grown in 13 small counties and parts of 7 others in South Georgia. It's a very tightly defined geographic location. I'm going to tell you why this onion can only be grown here and how all that came to be. But first, I want to introduce you to some of my favorite people in the world.
Yet, but it won't be long before the sun is high and blazing. But we'll bend our backs and we'll get work done. When the sun goes down, we'll have some fun. Hey, onions ain't the only thing we're good at raising. In sweet Vidalia, I hear you calling from my home, where roots run deep. Down in Dixie, deep down in Georgia, In sweet Vidalia, I hear you calling in from my home, where roots run deep. Down in Dixie, deep down in Georgia, where I prayed the Lord my soul will keep. Summer mornings coming on like summer's tea. It's sweet and strong, wouldn't be hot yet, but it won't be long. The sun is high and late, but when our backs will get where the sun sees to go well and Jim ain't gonna say nothing we do next week. Well, yes, so we remember where it comes from. Well, yes, so we remember where it comes from. Well, yes, so we remember where we come from. In sweet Vidalia.
Vidalia onions are so popular, they've even got their own museum. People literally come from around the world to find out more about this onion and this town. The story I've heard repeated many times is that there was one particular farmer here who got a late start, and then there was a little bit of a frost, and he lost his little plants that were out in the fields and couldn't get any more because everybody else already had them all. And he finally got somebody to ship him a load of 10-15 onions, which are much, much hotter than Vidalias, and that those planted here came up sweet, and he wasn't especially happy about it the first time it happened.
That's right, yeah. He wasn't expecting that, you know, but this particular onion turned out to be a little sweet, and they checked that out a little bit and found out it was sweeter than normal. So they didn't know what in the world to do with it. But then they found out pretty quick that people went wild over it, you know. This plant that we use, they'll grow this plant in the same variety in other parts of the world, other parts of this state, but come to find out it will not turn out as mild as it does right here. The sulfur leaches out of this particular soil, and it's only in this 20-county area, or actually 13 counties, parts of 7 others. So it's a fact, it's not just propaganda, it's the truth. First thing that we want the taste. We want the taste, the texture, the color, the shape, you know, but it's got to taste good.
It's funny, even though it was discovered here, that happy accident I love to talk about.
Right.
You know, that was sometime in the early 30s.
Right.
But it was about another 50 years before it really caught on in a big way, and the rest of the world looked up and said, what is this? We got to get our hands on these.
That's right. We had some fellas, some good old Georgia boys, I like to say, that came on and they said, you know, we got to market this thing. We got something big. We got something good. This onion excited people that grew it, and it excited people that sold it, and it excited people that ate it. You know?
I'm sure there's other vegetables that have a museum somewhere, or maybe there's a museum about all kinds of vegetables, but this is the only one I know of. The Vidalia onion is the only vegetable I know of, or fruit for that matter, that has its own museum.
It's the only one I know of, and it's real. You know, there's a lot of interesting history in this building here.
But this is my favorite thing in the entire museum. The 81-year-old man who stopped a mugger with Vidalia onion.
Yeah, come to find out, this fella from up the country liked Vidalia onion so well that he carried onions with him when he went out to eat. He would have for people to chop up that Vidalia onion. He had his girlfriend out one night, and a mugger came up to him, and he had it in a little bag, so he took the bag, beat the mugger off with that bag of onions. So that was pretty neat. I wouldn't go nowhere without one.
Now we're in Lyons, Georgia. That's in deep southeast Georgia. And in fact, it is right next door to Vidalia. I think the Welcome to Vidalia sign is on one side and the Welcome to Lyons side is on the other.
It's all right there together.
So, but within about an hour's drive of the spot where we're standing, every Vidalia onion you will ever see comes from.
That is exactly right.
Hundreds and hundreds of millions every year.
Absolutely. There's a defined area, and we work very strongly with our research people with the University of Georgia, and we're forever working on varieties that are conducive to this area. They work beautiful in this soil that we've got, and we every year we come up with just kind of a rotating thing to keep the best varieties available in the world. It's the best. It is the premier sweet onion.
So it was probably about 40 years ago or so that the rest of the world really started to catch on what was a local favorite for a long time.
That's right.
This industry got organized, pulled together. It became a very big deal very, very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. The people from outside the area, they would come through, you know, just on a trip or something. They'd pick up a few, and then they would tell each other later, hey, if you through the Vidalia area, pick me up some of those Vidalias. And they got to call on Vidalia. And they tasted it, they liked it, you know, come back to get more.
It makes it all the more special that you can only get it about 5 months out of the year.
It's exactly right. And you know what, and to top everything else off, we've got the perfect window, you know? We got the springtime when the folks up north and different places everywhere, but most of our customer base on the East Coast. And they're just getting out, and they want to get out and grill something, you know? Yeah. And you say, well, what better product would you want than to cook your burgers, you know, and have that nice slice of onion, you know? What onion? You want that Vidalia onion. Why? Because it tastes so good.
Now, when somebody sees the name Vidalia included in something, whether it's a sauce or a salad dressing or barbecue sauce, there's an assurance and a guarantee that that is a genuine Vidalia onion. It's not just some other sweet onion that's put in there.
And it's checked. We are very proud of that trademark. When you see that registered mark on the side of that, it's being monitored strong.
And that trademark actually belongs to the state of Georgia.
Absolutely. Well, that's one of the smartest things. They got the wherewithal to protect it. It takes money, you know, and we have had people test us, you know.
You know, we drive through so many small towns all over this country, and we see a lot of shuttered stores and abandoned buildings. And in this region of Georgia, you don't see that. You see a lot of mom and pop businesses. You see a lot of things that you would not see. You might see an art studio, you might see a fitness center, things that you just don't see in small towns. There's economic life
That's
in
right.
this area.
That's right. This is a year-round product. It takes you, it's a year-round, you know. We plant our seed beds in September. We transplant in November and December. And then they overwinter, and then we harvest in April and May, you know, and then we sell them through Labor Day. This impact, we figure this $140 to $150 million a year impact, you know. And this town, just get right down here with us, the town itself just more or less hinges around the Vidalia onion.
So the University of Georgia Vidalia Onion and Vegetable Research Center is in Lyons, Georgia. It's actually out in the middle of the country. On the edge of the town of Vidalia, this is kind of a starting place for a whole lot of the Vidalia onions that wind up on people's plates.
That's right. Our facility is actually right on the Toombs County and Tattnall County line, and it's sort of right in the middle of the majority of the onion production in this area. Probably about 95% of all the Vidalia onions are grown probably within about a 45-mile radius of this farm.
Of this particular facility?
Yeah, of our facility.
So that's out of hundreds of millions of pounds of onions every year. They all come from practically a 50-mile radius around the spot that we're sitting in.
That's correct. Probably 65% of the Vidalia onions are grown in Tattnall County, and probably another 30% are grown in Toombs County. And so it's all right here all around us.
Now, if you've never had a Vidalia onion, you wouldn't believe that you could just eat it like an apple. But I mean, that's exactly what people do.
That's
so,
right.
Cut me a piece off of that.
All right, I'm gonna let you try a piece here, and let you tell me what you think of it.
I know what I think of it. I haven't had this year's yet though, so this will be a first. So it's just 20 counties in Georgia.
That's right.
And they're not Florida counties or Texas counties. Georgia counties are small, so it's really a very small growing region. Mm-hmm. What is it about the soil, the region, that makes this the only place in the world that you can grow a Vidalia onion?
Well, the main thing about our location here in southeast Georgia is our sandy soils. And so one important thing to know about sandy soils is they do not hold sulfur very well. Sulfur is leached out easily by rainwater. And sulfur is one of the main components that gives an onion its hot flavor. Mm-hmm. And so you take away the sulfur, and that gives you a mild onion. So I'm gonna take a bite of this one too.
Go for it.
The process of growing an onion really starts in the summer before, like the crop now that we have now here in May, really got started last summer. We planted our onion seed beds in September of last year. And so we grew our onions on seed beds, high population, high density seed beds until they got about the diameter of a pencil or about as big around as your pinky finger. And then that's when the onions are transplanted once they get to that size. And that's usually in November and December. So they're transplanted into the fields or they're harvested then, and then they're grown all throughout the winter. And then they're ready for harvest in April and May.
Now that transplanting that takes place in December takes those little onion slips that have grown from the seeds, and those are set out, hundreds and hundreds of millions of them, by hand, each one individually.
That's correct, that's correct. And just to give you maybe a better understanding, so 1 acre of transplanted onions is anywhere from 85 to 95,000 onions in just 1 acre. And each one of those 90,000 onions in that acre is hand planted, and it's also hand harvested and hand clipped.
So when that gets on somebody's plate, that has been under control by other people, literally from the time it went to the ground.
We take a lot of care and a lot of pride into our crop, and so we think that's also part of what makes it so special and so unique.
You've got what, about 10 acres? And there's a lot of onions here, but there's a lot of other stuff here too.
That's right. We're standing in about a 10-acre field of onions right here. And this is where we do all of our onion tests this year. And 10 acres may or may not sound like a lot, but this 10 acres has hundreds of different test plots in it where we look at hundreds, where we look at all aspects of Vidalia onion production, anything from flavor to how well the onions yield to pest management, anything you can think of.
How much water they use, to how much fertilizer. You're trying to get the maximum efficiency out of an onion.
Right, nutrient management, water management, those are all things we look at and study here.
So Chris, this is part of the vegetable component of this facility. These are obviously tomatoes. What's going on out here?
These plants right here, this is just a simple variety evaluation, more actually of a demonstration. We do research and demonstration plots here, and so this is just an opportunity for us to see a new variety, to taste it, to share it with folks, and see how people like it.
It's not the kind of thing that people think about when they sit down to eat, but maybe they should. People are working constantly to make sure that that same tomato you've got on your plate now that you love is going to taste like that tomato, look like that tomato 10 years from now, even though it might be a different variety of tomato by then.
That's right, that's right. Varieties change, pests change, and so we just have to continuously work in agriculture to stay up with whatever's going on.
It's a race.
It's a race.
We feel, we do own this land we're standing on. God has provided it for us, but we feel more like stewards. A steward is a manager of a resource that they don't own, and that's what we feel like, that we are stewards of God's resources.
We get to bring them through the whole process, and now we packed them and we're about to get ready to ship them out. So 15 years ago when I started, I could probably get through here a lot easier than I can now. So I'll be right back.
And that's what we do it for, is we work to support our families and to support other families, and that's what the American farmer is all about.